Εξομολογήστε το Κύριο διαγραφός, αλληλούια, ότι στον αιώνα το έλεος αυτού, αλληλούια.
One of the great years or so has been a very profound observation that the Gospels copy from each other, and you can see that at the level of Greek.
How do you prove that they copy from each other and they're not talking about the same story?
Matthew, Mark,
how do you prove that?
And Luke, because at the level of Greek, you can see that in extended incidental commentary rather than just the words of Jesus.
Yes.
So the consensus of all the scholars at Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, wherever you go,
all of them,
it's the same. Is that there is copying going on. And the most common view is that Mark is the earliest gospel, and Matthew and Luke copy.
Can you
Mark.
prove that?
So, do you mind? I'm just trying to.
Do you mind if I hop in? Is that okay? Can I hop in?
Would you like him to join in?
Do you mind? You can stop me real quick. No, stay. No, pause there. Nothing what you're saying.
But please
Let him finish his conversation.
Sure thing.
So, as I was saying,
no worries.
So historians have concluded, and most of these historians are Christians, and I can name names if you want to know who they are.
Sorry to interrupt you, are they
Christian historians?
They're all different
Western
denominations. This is a trans-denomination. This is a cross-denominational thing. It's not anymore because there's an agreed understanding, a consensus, ijma on these issues. And what do they realise? Well, Mark being the earliest, it's interesting you can see how, nevertheless, Matthew and Luke change Mark in subtle ways, sometimes to elevate Jesus' status, and to give him titles and sayings which are not found earlier. One of my favourite examples, a very well-known example, you might have heard it before. In the earliest Gospel, a man comes to Jesus. This is chapter 10, verse 17 and 18 of Mark's Gospel. The earliest Gospel. A man comes to Jesus and says, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus says, why do you call me good? Why do you call me good? There is no one good but God alone.
Yes.
And then he says, obey the commandments.
Yes.
Now here,
and follow me.
And here,
you got to do both things.
According to many interpreters, and it's my view as well, Jesus denying any divinity.
Lies.
Why do you call me good?
In the beginning of Mark, if I could actually, this is a great thing. Hold on a moment. So wait. Let me butt in here for a second. No, it's okay.
So what happens now is you have that in Mark, very clearly stated, Jesus, in my view, denying his divinity. But in Matthew's version,
what does Mark's very first chapter say?
Matthew then changes the word. If you look at Matthew's version of the same event, the same story.
This guy's lying, so I gotta correct him. Sure. Let him talk to me. That's fine.
Matthew changes the words of Jesus very subtly to remove.
Well, prove that, please.
Remove the embarrassment, apparent embarrassment of his denial he's God or divine.
I see.
So in Matthew's version, in Matthew, I think it's 19, a man comes to Jesus and says, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal?" Same question.
Yeah.
In Matthew, same event. Jesus says, "Why do you ask me about what is good? There's no one good but God alone." So instead of denying his divinity in the early gospel, in Matthew, he avoids that issue entirely and is not denying his divinity. Now, there are many examples of the later Gospels changing the earlier Gospel for their own purposes. So in Mark, Jesus is not a Torah-observant Jew. He says the food laws have been abrogated, you can eat pork basically. But in Matthew...
Where does he say you can eat pork in Mark?
He corrects Mark and has Jesus teaching Torah observance to all disciples, be they Jew or Gentile.
Well, that's not true.
But then in John, I haven't got to John yet, John you have a very different kind of gospel from the other three. There, Jesus comes from another world, he comes from heaven, he's the divine son, he comes into the world, he is incarnate, and the word became flesh in John chapter 1 verse 14, I think. And he is divine in some sense.
Same here.
So if you look at the whole timeline, the earliest gospel was Jesus denying he is God, saying there is echoing the Shema of Deuteronomy, which is found in the Quran itself.
So are you done with your script, Paul?
And then all the way to John, where you have the exalted Jesus, who is divine. So how do you explain this?
Simple.
Well,
Okay.
In 99%, and I remember E.P. Sanders, the great American
Was that a
Jesus
question,
scholar,
or are you
writing about
still
this,
keep going?
He said that 99% of biblical scholars in the last 200 years have concluded the following: that John's Gospel represents a highly interpreted, highly developed account about Jesus.
You'd have to prove that, but you can't. It's just one claim.
To that extent, it's not historical, compared to the much earlier Jesus tradition found in Mark and Q and elsewhere, where we have the much more
There is
historical
no
Jesus.
Q, by the way.
And in
a
the
theory.
early tradition, Jesus is not divine.
He is divine. So, in the very first Gospel, verse 12 of Mark, it says, this is the beginning of the Gospel, Jesus Christ, the Son of God. So, in the very beginning of Mark, Jesus Christ is called Son of God. According to the Quran, if Allah had a son, then that son will be God and have to be worshipped. So, it is what it is.
In that regard. Now, you may reject the
Hey, no, it's think over, don't worry, think over. Because what's happening now is that Paul is going through a script. He can engage with me. That's fine.
Conclusions one can benefit from.
He's having a monologue. That's what he's having.
Accept biblical scholarship.
Convo is
In the
involved like a
churches,
back
in
and
the Church of
forth.
England,
It's a monologue.
Catholic Church, even some in the Orthodox churches do accept biblical scholarship.
Subhanallah.
Allah is Shaitan.
Oh, they're both out now.
No, stay. Stay, Paul, stay. I think you stay.
They're trying to destroy our conversation.
No, stay right here. So, Paul, how do you account for the fact that the beginning of the Gospel of Mark addresses Christ as the Son of God?
You are the father of the
We don't believe what you believe in. We don't believe what we believe. At the same time, we have respectful and productive.
But I thought the Quran says you can't have Christians as friends.
I think some people, those people actually they misrepresent Christianity.
How so?
They misrepresent it because in the
Sheikh, what is Christianity?
in heckling,
Sheikh is shaking at the moment
heckling people.
Hey, man.
because he cannot answer the question.
I didn't say anything rude just so far.
Sheikh is shaking.
So, Poly W. So, apparently, you say that the Gospel of Mark teaches that Christ is not God. Why does the Gospel of Mark begin with the fact that Jesus Christ is the Son of God? According to your Quran, Surah 43, Ayah 81, if the Almighty had a son, Muhammad will have to worship him. So, therefore, the Gospel of Mark, according to the Quran, is preaching that Christ is divine. So, now what's wrong?
Sorry.
So,
All right.
One second. So
Well,
on
Paul-
this,
on the subject, I mean, do you accept an historical investigation of the
No,
Gospel?
you've run through a script with no
Or
evidence.
do you
So,
reject that?
Yes,
in
I
the
do.
sense of, well, I prefer seeing them as the word of God, they're infallible.
Yeah.
We're not to look at them historically.
no. Okay. So what? As an Orthodox Christian, we go straight to the source
From Muhammad.
of who put them books together. The teachings of the Christianity was brought up by a community of people, oral traditions. Very important, that oral tradition. It wasn't just like
and not in one location,
just
across the
like,
world at the same time.
The Muslim will know.
Yeah, they copied us.
The Quran off by heart and recite it. But the Christians, they could do. That's why Jesus spoke in parables. So the community grew. So from there, that growth, before the Bible was put together, they had beliefs and they knew what they needed.
Yes.
So now, when we come to all this, or what you're saying, and you're right, there are
No, he's not right.
there are
He's
contradictions
not right.
in the
No.
in interpretations of
He's
the
not
Bible,
right.
the English version, the James version, the new NIV, and all this. They do, and there's a feminist Bible. There's so much all this. So, where do we get our teaching, and how do we interpret? For example, when you hit on that verse, for example, one of the verses, like when Jesus said,
Why'd you call me good? There's no
why'd you
one
call me good? There's only one is God.
Yeah.
So it's how you interpret it and how probably Western scholars interpret it is
It's not Western scholars, these are all
Like who?
scholars.
But look,
Can you tell me an Indian scholar that represents that way?
There's not British people who are saying this.
Yeah, but
These are Christian scholars throughout the world.
yeah, but we
Okay,
go,
can you
we
tell me one
go-
from India?
or
Or Romania?
We go straight
Okay.
to the source that was
Only
put
English
down by
speakers. Great.
by the bishops from the church history, right from the time. How was these things interpreted?
The question is, I hear what you're saying, and from what you're
So we
saying
know
is
the
very
truth.
orthodox, and
Yeah.
that is an authentically orthodox perspective.
And we go by the
I get
Greek
that. But the Koine Greek, excellent. This is the common Greek of the time, which the Gospels are written in.
Yes.
But that's the point. If you look at the detail and you look at once you see that there is a literary dependence in the Greek, i.e., someone's copying from someone else, and then you see the changes that were made in the Greek by later Gospels, the question then doesn't go away.
Where do you go?
What you see, you may interpret.
You'd have to prove
Mark
copying.
chapter
That's the
10
problem.
differently. But Matthew changed the words of Jesus
You're
to
pushing me,
remove
by
the
the way.
I
denial
didn't
that
touch
he
you.
was divine.
I didn't touch you.
And the
Get
question
out
is,
of here.
why then did Matthew do that? And many scholars, again, this is not a proof thing, like a scientific experiment, a chemistry experiment that I can prove
Well,
to you.
you're going to have to prove it, because you made a claim, so prove it.
But the question is,
That's fine.
Once you get
What
their
hermeneutic
copying,
principle are you
to
using?
explain
That's what you're
why
going to do.
Gospel writers changed the words of Jesus. And for me, I find it most plausible that Matthew, I can't prove this, but
Okay, so it's a
very
claim only
plausible
then.
definition,
So I have to believe you.
that the reason why Matthew changed the word Jesus was because he was embarrassed by Jesus' denial of his divinity. And at the end of the first century, in Matthew's community, talk about communities, where Jesus was believed to be divine in some sense, this was not a belief that you could have Jesus espousing. So they just simply changed what Jesus said in Mark.
Lies.
Now that's a very plausible explanation. Now you may reject that. I find it very plausible. But you have reasonably you have to offer an explanation that makes.
You haven't offered the one. You just said your opinion.
With all the observations that we have made so far, and I've not heard an explanation that can explain why Matthew changed the words of Jesus that is consistent with what he actually did, removing Jesus denying that he is divine and making him not say that. Why would Matthew do it? That's my question.
So
and the
Matthew
other
didn't
thing,
do that.
And the second thing is this.
This is the only problem.
Christians love quoting from the Gospel of John, understandably. Jesus says amazing things. I am the light of the world. Before Abraham was, I am. I am the resurrection and the life.
Son and as well.
Endlessly, all these amazing I am statements. Ego emi in Greek. And it's fascinating because it looks like, many scholars would say he's taking the divine name when before Abraham was, I am, in Greek. It says say that. The problem is this, okay? Jesus went around saying these things, according to John, in public, all over the place, to everyone, his disciples, to the unfriendly Jews, everyone. I am this, I am that. But nowhere, no other gospel, no other source we have ever records Jesus saying any of these things. In Mark, our earliest
that's
gospel,
a fallacy.
Jesus never said,
Are you implying that for something to be true, it has
in
to be
Matthew,
said
he
over
never
and over
says, I
again
am
in all
the
the
resurrection
Gospels?
and the life. In Luke, he never says, before Abraham was, I am.
And the begotten Son as well.
And Q. which is
So
also
all
a
the
very early
Gospels
source,
talk about him
which
rising
is,
from the grave.
a
So that
very
means it's
early
true
source.
then, because they all talk
In
about
Q
it.
source, Jesus never speaks like that. In the other two other sources,
Well,
called
you gotta
M
show me the Q
and
source.
L, Jesus never speaks
You
like
need to show me
this.
those sources as well
we
then.
have
Show
two
me them,
comments.
so we can
If
see.
Luke says in his prologue, Dear Theophilus, I give you an ordinary account of all the things that have happened amongst us, so you may know the truth of what you have believed. He's giving a biography of Jesus, chapter after chapter after chapter. I am the light of the world. So how do we account
So
for this
in
fact?
Luke 1,
According to the
Elizabeth
scholars.
literally says
But the
that when
consensus
Mary
is
comes to come and see
that
her,
John
that she's
puts
been
the word-
visited by the
John's
mother of her
gospel
Lord.
is a,
So the mother of God. So again,
his belief
even
about
in Luke,
Jesus
Christ is
being the
divine.
light of the world, so he puts those words on Jesus' lips and has him say, I am the light of the world. Not that Jesus actually said any of these things.
How can you
it's
prove
what
he
you
didn't?
believe about these things.
Because
So
the
top
earliest
scholars at
sources
King's
claim he
College,
did.
who are
So what's the
priests,
counter-evidence
people
to
I
it?
know have argued this, that these are confessional documents. So John would say, I believe Jesus is the light of the world, and he puts these words on the lips of Jesus. Because they're
Prove
not
that.
there in the earlier sources.
They don't
If
have to
Jesus-
be there.
The problem is this, if Jesus went around talking like this, why did no one ever record Jesus talking like this?
Because they
until the
wrote to
end of
different
the first
communities
century, in the
who needed to
very
hear
last
different
gospel,
things.
Which is a highly interpreted,
And by the way,
creative
the Gospel of
belief about
John
Jesus.
can be
And
argued
that's
to be
the
written
challenge.
before 70
And
AD
I've never heard
because of
any
John
Christian
5:2.
ever respond to this.
Well, my
Ever.
Let me respond to it.
response to this, which is a good point.
Yeah?
He
Come
made
over
it
here and
very
respond to
clear
us.
That John's gospel came later and made Jesus God.
No, that's not true.
I'm
From
saying that
his
the
words,
words,
he made
these
him
sayings,
divine.
why are these sayings only found in one gospel? The most juicy,
Because
highest
John is allowed to have
where he
his own
claims
interpretation
divinity.
of Jesus Christ.
Mark knows nothing about this, neither does Luke, neither does Matthew, neither does Q, neither does M. All of our
Matthew, Mark,
sources,
Luke, and John
no
all
one
believe
ever
Christ is
records
God,
Jesus
so
talking
it's all
like this.
good.
But lo and behold, at the end of the first century, suddenly, all of these statements, Jesus walks around
He's
talking like this all the
divine
time.
and all that.
See, it doesn't,
He's divine in all the
the
Gospels.
best explanation is that these words have been creatively added and put on the lips of Jesus.
No, the interpretation is that you don't read the Gospels well enough. That's the only problem.
I discovered this.
You weren't a Christian,
Paul.
Paul.
My faith as a Christian.
You weren't a Christian.
And I went from commentary to commentary to commentary, trying to find some way out of this problem.
Did you read any
It was
church
a problem
fathers?
for me then. Why did
so
why
only
is John
contemporary
the only
scholars,
one ever
I
to
see.
record these public statements? And and everyone was telling me, all these scholars were saying in their books, because John puts these
So
words
if a
on the
scholar
mouth
says
of
something,
Jesus.
then you
They
believe
all
it.
say it.
So
Because
your ulama are the
historically, it
scholars
makes no
only.
sense.
All right, got it.
Historically, makes no sense.
So, okay.
That's challenging, having this person shout.
No, don't worry. I can answer all your
articulate
questions.
my case
You
to
said
you.
no Christian can
Thank
answer it for
Thank
you.
for
Let
listening.
me answer it for you then, Paul. I'm a Christian.
Sorry?
This guy
The problem is,
is a scholar.
No, he's not.
I'm not a scholar.
He's not no damn scholar.
What do people say?
He studied his theology and he knows what
He just repeats the scripts.
Was taken to
So,
shreds by Muhammad Hijab
ultimately,
when he last spoke
what
to
this
him.
individual
The
is
guy
saying
doesn't even
here,
know his own
that
religion.
he was a Christian, and he looked
I
at
want to
some
ask you a question.
Yes.
contemporary interpretations of the Bible. Did
No,
he ever
yeah,
look
yeah,
at any
yeah,
church
please have
fathers?
a
No, he
response.
didn't.
I want, your breath stinks. Just
Your breast was like camel pea shake, please.
okay. Now here, you know the issue is there is one question here.
Well, you see, that's two actually.
John
So,
John
Paul, I'm
is-
right here. Talk to me.
Is someone
Right?
who-
'Cause I can ask the
you
question for
said
you if you
copied
want.
from Mark, correct?
Yes.
Well, prove it. That's what I gotta say.
That's a consensus of virtual
The problem
scholars.
is, from my
Okay, really?
understanding,
Well,
that
in that case,
John is the
all
one
scholars
who,
also
who
agree that
could
all
be the
the
eyewitness, which is, could be one of those
Gospels talk about him
because we don't know,
resurrected.
there is
So that means
there
he
is kind
resurrected.
of ambiguity again about the
Even
who's
if he
John.
was, the problem remains that he has an account of Jesus' life which is so radically different from
No, it's
any
not.
other account.
Same thing as all
that
the other
you have
Gospels.
to choose. Historians have had to choose. Do you go with the earliest gospel,
Circular, by
and
the way, not
earliest
Christian
evidence,
historians.
which has Jesus as a prophet, as a Messiah, as a miracle worker, as an exorcist, as a man who healed
As
the
the
sick,
Son of
all
God
of these
too.
things, which are
And
all
the
in
Cloud
the Quran
Rider.
as well, or do you go
In
with
John-
John,
in,
who
Mark
has Jesus
16.
say, "I am the light of the world"?
You
But
go
only
with
John
all of
ever
them.
has this. No earlier eyewitness, alleged eyewitness, ever has Jesus speak like this. You have to choose which is his history. Jesus couldn't go around and be like the Jesus of Mark
Well,
and the
prove
Jesus
that he
of John.
couldn't. Prove
you
it.
have to choose.
Prove it.
And
can't be both.
virtually everyone
They aren't
has
contradictory.
chosen Mark and rejected John when it comes to real testimony about who Jesus really
Prove
was.
that. Prove
That's
that
the
everyone's done it.
consensus.
Prove it.
That's what
So name all the scholars and
say.
then show me what they say.
We go to Matthew. There's fragments of Matthew in Magdalen University in Oxford. And in that manuscript, there is in Greek, and it says O Kyrios, which means the Lord, not a Lord, the Lord.
Which verse is this?
I don't know.
That would help to know which
Well,
verse
there's
you was.
fragment-
There are
yeah.
28 chapters in Matthew. It's good to know which one is.
You haven't
Matthew
been specific,
University,
Paul.
John's
You just said general things, so you go find it.
Statements book.
Okay,
It's
well,
in there.
we need to know
But
precisely which chapter.
where I go,
You haven't given any citations yourself,
we don't
so you doesn't have
believe,
to.
like Roman Catholic, Protestants, we don't believe sola scriptura.
Salam alaikum.
We don't believe in just what the Bible is, that is it.
familiar with Orthodox
We
theology.
agree the Bible, but there is who controls that Bible? What tradition
Sheikh,
was
you just
there?
pushed me.
How do we interpret everything? This is very big. You've interpreted that, oh, they've taken it out there, they mean this or they mean that.
Based on
No,
selective
fine.
scholarship.
There's more to it than that. There's more. You have to. We don't go just. If
Where's your Muslims?
there's
No, it's
there's
Christian
an
now.
issue in
What
there,
is it?
like these issues you're saying.
Yeah. What
brings you
And
down?
be honest.
Where's your camera?
No, you
Poly
are
D is
honest.
lying about Christianity, so I'm here to
You are
confront
honest.
him.
He's a good man.
I have no
But
idea.
you haven't, when you
The
trained
Brazilian brother.
from being a Roman,
So,
you didn't really
you wanna find
go
us?
to the
I think I stole his mic. I'll give it back later.
The church, the Orthodox church, Eastern Orthodox.
Actually, I became a Catholic whilst I was a student of the Bible at university.
So Poly D over here is repeating his scripts.
Theology, the
So
church,
here's the funny thing about Paul, right?
Everything you're talking
I
about,
saw
was
him go on
studying
this
that
show one
academically.
time.
At
Then
that point, I
they asked
entered
him,
into,
what do you know like about the Bible, or
Catholic
what do you
Church.
find
I didn't know
incoherent
about
about it?
Islam.
And he gives this whole script about how Mark is the
so I was
earliest and
intensely
John is the
aware of
latest,
these things you
and
were
John is
talking
the least
about
historical,
from an
right? So
academic
you
point
can't
of
really
view.
trust it because it represents a highly
But
interpreted
I found
version of Jesus
remarkably
Christ, right? That's what he
in
said.
my studies
Then the
before
guy
it
asked him,
worked,
okay,
that the
Muhammad is
Jesus
the
of
Bible,
the
right?
Quran,
And then he's like,
there's
yeah.
a remarkable
And then
similarity
he's like, where can you
to
find Muhammad in the Bible?
Jesus of
You know what Paul
history
says?
that historians
John.
talk about. In terms of what he believed, what he
Huh?
taught,
I have. I'm right here, but you don't
his
talk to me because
relationship
he's scared.
with God and so on.
What's he's done?
What the Quran says is
He'll run
actually,
because he's scared.
pretty
I'll
much
challenge him on all of
confirmed
his
in
points.
generalities
Ask for
with
evidence
what,
and he won't give it to me.
Historians say. This
I was talking to Paul most times, he just runs
between
our way every
history
single
and
time.
Islam is
That's his
truly
problem.
remarkable and deserves a lot
Because basically
more
all
people
Paul
talking
can
about
do,
it than they are
Paul's
in the
power is
academic
his
world.
accent. People think he's
I'm
smart
very
because
happy
he
to talk
sounds
about
like
it
this
because I
when he
think
speaks.
it's a really fascinating
That's
subject.
all it is.
So if you look into history and you look at the Quran,
What
you will
history?
notice a lot of parallels. You
Really?
won't find it in Christianity, unfortunately. If you start
Real?
off from the Trinity,
See that now?
incarnation,
So apparently now
Jesus'
there's a
death as
parallel
sin
between
offering
Jesus
for your
Christ
sins,
and Mark
you will
and in
not
the
find
Quran.
that in
I
the
agree.
Quran. And you will
In
not
Mark
find
it says
in
that Christ
history
is the
either,
Son of
in my
God.
view.
In the Quran it says the same thing.
That's
What?
my response.
But you didn't know, because my question, you didn't go.
He just wants to break the
Hey, don't worry, I'm in here.
I did read
I'm here to spread the haqq, to the truth of things, you know? I'm here to bring hikmah.
He's Orthodox bishop. He's
How
a
you doing?
beautiful book called Introduction to Orthodoxy. I read that twice. I took Orthodoxy very seriously.
Me, no,
so I
no way.
understand where you're coming from, but when it comes to these issues, it doesn't really matter if you're Orthodox or Catholic, because the issues
Jack.
remain the same. They don't change.
I think you're able to build
So
your
the
own
prophet,
conversation.
your prophet,
And if it's
in
Jesus
Saudi Arabia,
Slightly inaccurate.
I'm also here to defeat lies. I'm here to do two things. And Paulie over here is lying too much.
and those years of tradition and teaching and interpreting
I think I can do both.
correctly, what does this mean? What does this mean? Pass
I can
down,
do both.
Yeah? And you
I have to.
isnat.
I can do both.
Yeah? You have isnat as
Well,
well.
I hear you. Listen, I
Now,
hear you. I
imagine
hear you.
now,
I can do both.
me, I'm listening to some Western scholars.
I am not here for my own
Now,
glory.
they
So it's okay. I can get lower in the elevator. It doesn't matter to me.
Say that. I won't listen to that. I have to listen to
Just interrupting.
I'm not here to be elevated or lowered. It doesn't matter to me.
and what was carried on. And this is very
The
important.
courtesy
This
to
is
let
what
them
I'm
finish
saying
the
about
conversation,
Orthodox. You have
and then go to Paul and say, Paul, I'd like to discuss this.
He'll just run.
Muslim Christian
He
dialogue.
called it, and then say Paul runs
wasn't
away.
any question
Where's
of
your camera?
I want to debate him, but every week he's running from
Paul will run soon. But, you know, it is what it is. John is the latest gospel. John's gospel is highly interpreted. Yeah, whatever, man.
says, the people refer to the people.
He just sounds English. That's his only superpower.
The Bible is corrupted. But then we're produced. What? How do you know? You know that you've rejected 70%.
I hear what you're saying. I have a basic familiarity with the Orthodox, but having studied it a little bit, not as much as I'd like. But the point is this, and I don't think you haven't addressed it. John has Jesus going around saying some incredible things. I am the light of the world, before the resurrection. It's an endless statement.
Well, he'll run, but, you know,
Only found
I'm right
in
here.
one gospel in the entire Bible.
Doesn't matter.
Every time I talk, like,
If Jesus did go around talking like that,
It's a script, man. He says it everywhere.
no other earlier gospel
In the exact
ever
same fashion.
recorded him
It's a
talking
script.
like that. Because Luke, as I've already said, tells Theophilus in his prologue that he is setting out an orderly account of all these things, that he may know the truth about Jesus.
Paul,
And yet
you're on
he
a
omits
script.
all of this.
Be
So does
dynamic.
Matthew, so
I've
does
heard him
Mark,
say the same thing
does
3 times
Jude,
now.
So does
Do you know that?
This is the problem.
I know as Muslims, you guys like to repeat things over and over again. But it gets boring for me.
Address this. This is the first century. The Orthodox
He just repeats the same line over and over
before all
again.
that,
engage with him.
Why?
we have to look historically at our sources, and when we compare
Well,
them,
George is
we
not
throw out
listening
these
and he
kinds of
interrupts halfway
questions.
through
They're not-
and then repeats the same script again.
Professors at Oxford and Cambridge.
It doesn't
and Harvard,
matter
all
what
these
some
people talk
secular
about
professors
it.
say. It doesn't matter.
The standard answer is that John is a highly creative, frankly,
No, it's not.
fictionalized account of the teaching of Jesus. The earlier sources are more historically reliable, and the earlier.
Okay,
this is
well, the
amazing,
earliest
the earlier
says that
the more Islamic
Christ is the Son of
Jesus
God.
seems.
No, it's
He
not.
seems like a Muslim.
He calls
In that
himself the
he
Cloud Rider.
prays before God. He
So,
speaks
George,
like he's teaching about the mercy of God.
Bring up Mark 1. Bring up Mark 1.
educating the people that he's going to his father and your father, my rather than that meaning. He can say
So is Allah his father?
he was relying,
So he's the son of Allah? Okay, fair enough then. So I guess Allah does have a son.
rather than to say,
Because you see the folly. They're quoting Mark and making reference to Christ, calling God the Father as though it's Islamic.
Even in the earlier Gospels, and compare it with the teaching of
He'll run.
Islam,
If we all start
whether it be on
interrupting each other,
salvation,
conversations will not be happening.
No, it's fine. I'll bring you guys in. That's what I always do.
We can go. We can compare.
I always bring you guys in. I don't shun your way. I bring you all in.
That's
how I like to
what
do things.
Islam teaches. In a Jewish context, of course, but nevertheless, essentially it's the same. I do not find that when I look at the Orthodox Church and what they teach about salvation, about sin, that's not what I find on the lips of Jesus, and it's not what I find in the Quran. So I have to choose. Who do I follow? Jesus? Or do I follow the Orthodox Church? And I, as a Muslim,
follow
choose
Jesus
to follow
Christ.
Jesus because
Awesome.
only by following Jesus.
And the only way you can follow Christ is by reading about what he said in the Gospels, not in the Quran.
Things to mind. Where in the Bible, what gospel did he say when they picked up his coach?
John.
And he says, I am.
These are all in John. These juicy stuff are all
Where
in
does
John.
it say in the Bible, it says, there are many things said and done, but the whole world called out of it?
John.
Is it John?
Yeah, keep going. You see, you want to keep going back to John all the time because it's the one that gives you your beliefs. If we put John aside, the latest one, and come to the earlier evidence, there you will find a Jewish Jesus who is remarkably Islamic.
Who is the Son of God?
Okay.
So Allah is the Son. Very well, Paul. You've left Sunni Islam.
So you're saying
Good job.
because they're not said in the other Gospels,
No, I'm saying you have to choose.
It's nonsense.
Which is
By the way,
historic? Which is
can
history?
we move because this guy.
No. I'm right here. George, out of curiosity, ask him to read Mark 1.
Because the issue is.
Yeah, that's what I want to see.
Because he tried. What
No. Stay right here. Stay right here. Stay right here and have a conversation. So, Paul, you keep lying,
I'm looking forward to
and then I'd love to, engage with that.
you've picked up this about John. But then what do you do with all the...
I'm not picking up on it. This is something that
You have picked it up about
your
John.
Christian scholars have been saying it for over a century.
Not-
Yeah, even some of your scholars have been saying... No, there are.
That is not true.
People like Zizoulis at King's College in London. Is an
Okay,
academic
says
guy.
what?
He's
Says what?
Orthodox, Greek
Says
Orthodox.
what?
I forget his Greek or Russian.
Says what?
He's an Orthodox theologian.
Says what?
Who understands this. So
Yeah,
it's
and he
not
says what?
just everyone else apart
No.
from-
What does he say? Let me go find it right now. What does he say?
So what do you
Paul,
do
what does he
with-
say? You can't tell me. There you go. Awesome.
You've said this, yeah?
Claims
There
with no
are
evidence.
things-
Why are
Nonsense.
you interrupting for?
Let me just say,
finish.
what do you
Don't
do?
interrupt me,
Come
okay?
on, man, let them finish.
Don't interrupt me.
Why?
Let me do my thing.
Wait a minute, you interrupt him, but then I can't interrupt you.
Exactly. You see that?
Are you
See that?
serious?
You see that?
Are
See
you
that?
serious?
See that?
How's he
Exactly.
gonna die? How's
Exactly.
he
You're sarcastic.
gonna be crucified?
Yes.
He's gonna resurrect. What do you do with all these actually
So
dangling?
he interrupts George. I interrupt him. You interrupt me. It's okay, man.
So what do we do
We're a
with
giant
all
interruption
these
circle. Let's just keep doing it.
What do we do
what?
with the resurrection?
We're a giant circle of interruptions. Let's just keep doing it until someone gives
Stop
up.
introducing it to conversation.
Well, Paul is just doing his monologues. That's all he's doing.
When he's
It's not really a
finished,
conversation.
say Paul, I would want to speak with you.
Stand by the-
Hey, Paul, what are you not done? Don't run.
We're talking about the early church. I'm talking about
There you go.
the same churches that are there now in Jerusalem and just about in Gaza and all these places. But these are churches where the
It's
Jews...
good to remember, by the way, that Palestinians...
Ooh, look, interrupted it. Ooh, look at that. You interrupted me, did you? Okay, fair enough.
By the Zionists. It's not just...
Okay, that's what I'm doing right now.
Christians.
To him.
I saw
There you go.
Christian
You're not part of the
pastor,
conversation.
Neither is Paul.
Who was speaking the
Paul
truth
is
about
just
the
simply
genocide
interrupting
happening.
every
Remember,
like.
it's
So Paul
Christians
talks for 10
and,
minutes and then gives you 2 minutes and then interrupts again. So that's 10 more minutes.
Palestinians. Thank you for mentioning
Speaking to each
Gaza.
other.
Did you...
Because
If George took offence, he'll say
the-
something. Paul took offence, he'll say something.
Hear about, did you see the Orthodox Christian priest, an old man, when Muslims said, when he said that they're going to bomb our minaret, is it minaret? I will go up there and pray for you. Did you hear that bit?
I will tell you something. In Jordan and Palestine, we have a very unique relationship between Muslims and Christians. Very unique relationship.
Yeah.
And I will tell you something from my experience. I came from a city called Caracas, told you earlier, which we have as well. We have like an old church.
Oh,
we have
okay.
still Christian minority living there.
I'm
for
good, thank you,
centuries,
I'm good.
living throughout the Islamic history. Now, you know the amazing thing. During the month of Ramadan, you find those Christians who live there because they're neighbors to the Muslims. So they don't allow their children to have food in the street. They will call their children to feed inside and then to go to play with the children. That's how much it is. And in that area, the same area, you'll find other Muslims because we know that the people, the Christian, the Orthodox, they observe the lynch. Yeah. So they don't cook even meat in the area because their neighbors, they're Christian. This is how much. This is how much
like
they
brothers.
Yeah, that's how much
But the politics
they
get
respect.
involved.
They respect each other.
And this about Gaza and all the bombings and all that's politics. It's a complicated thing. I don't want to say about that. But all I want to say is
your point about the Old Testament prophecies is a good point. So
the early Jews,
I can respond to
the first Christians were Jews. The first island to become Christian was Cyprus. My parents were. Them churches never changed. So when they went in the homes and then they started the church and then they set up the church, this was right from the very beginning. What about all this community and all this? There was no issue about all that. Although, with respect, yes, of course there were issues with you needed Athanasius to come in and clear up to protect the truth. But these are very complex things, you know. You've got to go too deep, and we need to go. It's not just Western. We don't go. We know what is passed down in the tradition.
No, George, ask him your question. Ask him your question, because now he's going to interrupt you. Ask him the question.
About these Old Testament prophecies. And I think this is a really good example. That's why I was Googling this. So in Paul's first letter of the Corinthians, chapter 15, this is the NIV, the Standard Evangelical Translation. It's the same in all the translations. He says this: "For I received," in Greek it's paradosis.
Too much telewatching.
This means tradition. You hand over. But what I received, I passed on to you, the Corinthians, as a first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures. That he was buried, that he was raised on the third day according to the Scriptures. Now, leave it there because these are the points where he references the Scriptures, is what you're talking about, prophecies. Now, I've read the Jewish Bible cover to cover.
No, you haven't.
And I've never any prophecy in the
So George, he's brought this up multiple different times.
Messiah will die for sins,
Get a bus from there.
and then on the third day, the Messiah will be raised.
That's not
from the
what
dead.
Paul is
I've
saying.
literally never found it anywhere in the Bible, and neither, in my experience, has anyone else.
By the way,
Wait, so ultimately, George,
Oh, really?
George, I would say he needs to prove to you that he's talking about one verse only.
And enticing towards that the Messiah is God. There is no way talking about the Messiah. We talk about the Messiah.
He's always a human figure.
Savior, human figure. Someone is going to save the people. Someone is going to people. They will look up to him to be followed.
And also all nations will come to him and worship him. Daniel 7:13.
To be worshipped. That's something.
Daniel 7 says that.
So coming back to Jonah, you see, Jonah is a story or a parable even about a guy who was told to go preach to the Ninevites, but is swallowed by a whale that he preached. The Ninevites repented, etc. Nowhere in that, and I'll be quite strict on this.
He's lying. In Jonah chapter 1, he does. He does.
Who would die, and on the third day he rose again.
So Jonah's a typology. That's all he is.
Jonah has nothing to do with this subject.
Yes, he does actually.
You would have to read Jonah in a highly allegorical, symbolic way, which some people call eisegesis. This is
So
actually a
we
joke.
believe in typologies.
Eisegesis, the opposite of exegesis. Eisegesis sounds like I see Jesus, which is what Christians often do. They see
Funny,
Jesus
Paul. Very
all
funny.
over the Old
Great job.
Testament, but they read him into the text. They don't read him out of the text, which is what exegesis, which is what historians do. I'm trying to practice history here. Jonah has nothing to do with the Messiah dying and rising from the dead. But you can have your highly symbolic allegorical. The problem with that is you can argue anything. I can say that Muhammad is mentioned all over the
Well, show me.
Old Testament.
Show it to me.
Because in my highly
Show it to me.
allegorical interpretation,
Yeah, show it to
he's
me.
on every page of the Bible.
Show it to
So
me.
He's not.
Show
I'm
it.
not arguing that.
No, prove it
but
then.
If I use that methodology,
Well, you do that anyway. Because you believe that Muhammad is
That's
in
why I
the
don't
book
adopt
of John.
Good point. All right. So
It's not a good point, it's a bad
these
point.
things are very detailed, you have to get into exactly sites, certain passages, why
Yeah.
interpret the way and it's a very long discussion of these things. But you raise very good points. Let me ask you something else now.
About Jonah, though, how do you respond to that? Because you mentioned Jonah. So
Yeah,
how does
I mentioned
Jonah
that, but-
reference
that was a prophecy.
John,
about-
yeah, sorry, George, you can defer to me if you want.
By the rising up.
But in Jonah? I've never read. I've read Jonah. It's not talking about Jesus. It's talking about Jonah the prophet talking to Ninevites.
What's happening?
It's not. It's not in Jonah at all. It's not there.
Okay, I can see because I'm wise enough to explain all that. But you know, if I could just go back to, have you seen the podcast of Jay Dyer about the continuity?
He's talked to Jay Dyer before, and Jay Dyer told him this already.
I don't think I have. No.
It's very interesting to look at that as well. Just to see.
There are no priests in Islam. That's the problem.
And on the Trinity. Sorry, I'm just saying, because I'm not as articulate. Jay Dyer is awful.
Sorry. No, I'm still here, Paul, and you're gonna run. Don't worry. I'm right here next to you. Don't worry about it.
Can you put your time? Can you put your time to better use?
I can. By spreading fitna in the dunya. By destroying bad dawah. By getting the ball.
David, why are you trying to conversations?
Because he's lying. And I don't like liars.
Bro, I see many
The
people.
Bible says
I see many
that
people lie.
the devil is the father of liars. So Paul's father right now is El Diablo, the shaitan. You know? That Paul right there.
Soul Paul.
No, Paul W, PW. Paulie W.
The one who had an argument with James.
Huh?
The Paul had an argument with James.
No, the one that had an argument with David and keeps running from him. That one.
He's not important.
Huh?
Let's keep it and let them talk.
Yeah.
You can like, come and laugh when you
Hear the liars and absorb them.
And I've read every single word of the Old Testament.
That's a lie.
What do you think?
So Paul, tell me the four things that are inside out of the covenants. There you
David,
go.
man, come on.
Idris, please. Stop whining.
Come on.
Stop whining, man.
Come on, man. Seriously.
You're a grown man. Stop doing
I
that.
am a grown man. Come on.
And he didn't take
I'm not whining. You shouldn't whine either.
Dude. Please.
Yes, my man. Please what?
Stop interrupting.
Okay, then maybe, I don't know, go somewhere else or something. I don't know.
The Romans were very crucified.
I won't follow you.
They crucified lots of people. Any troublemakers, they picked them up and crucified them. They weren't particularly fussy about Jewish theology. Roman soldiers didn't care about theology. They didn't care about potential troublemakers. And a guy who went around seemingly claiming to be the Messiah, and in Jewish tradition, a Messiah was a king like David, a human warrior. And if you've got a guy who's apparently claiming to be a warrior under Roman occupation, what do the Zionists do today? You bomb them, you kill them, and they execute them. That's the motive. The motive is clear.
That's a lie.
They weren't concerned with Christology and tradition and priests and Jewish theology. They didn't care about that.
Didn't Jesus blaspheme?
He didn't blaspheme.
That was a charge against him.
The I am statements are all in John.
And we can't.
How many times do I have to say
Yeah,
this?
I know that, and we can't accept that.
Well, you have to account for why Jesus speaks what he does in John. It's not found anywhere else.
It doesn't have to be. Simple as that.
You have to choose.
Because they all write to different communities. Simple.
Think historically for a second. Does Jesus go around talking like the Jesus of Mark or like
Yes, he
John?
does.
He can't do both because
Yeah, you can.
neither says he does both.
Mark 1.
There you go. Mark 1,
is
done.
not Jesus speaking. That's Mark himself
But
talking.
Mark himself considers. No, it doesn't have to be verbatim. It doesn't have to be. You have to prove that. Huh? Hey man, I'm here with God, man. Never get tired.
Christian scholars, the keyboard warriors.
Oh yeah, by the way.
No, your keyboard.
No,
you don't make sense.
Come here.
I don't talk to you.
Suraj,
All Christians here, mama.
Come here.
All Christians, mama.
You told me last week that apparently in John, in Daniel 7, that apparently.
Shall I ask you? Come,
You told me.
let's talk.
Hold on. Sit right here.
Let's talk.
Listen very carefully to me.
Come.
You told me last week that in Daniel 7, it says that the cloud rider would have his kingdom taken away from him.
Yes.
Siraj, you can't read.
Come on. Okay, come on. What do you want? Shall we talk about that?
Get the camera.
Oh,
Let me get him first, and I'll come get you.
Come on.
No worries.
Come on.
Don't worry, I'll get you next.
Christians all the time when you're
David, what are you running away for?
I'm standing still, so. But that's fine. If you want. So, Siraj, if you want, I'm right here.
Why they hiding?
We can talk right here.
Why?
But I'm gonna get Paul too, so don't worry about it.
Jesus is God the Father. The God of Christians is God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Who is the way then? The God of Jesus is only one.
Siraj, that's just lazy.
God the Father.
That's just
the Son,
lazy.
and the Holy Spirit.
So, look, Idris, look, Paulie, get over here. Hey, Idris, look at this. Look at your boy, Paul. Hey, Paul, I want to address your points. You claim no Christian can. I am a Christian, I want to. Don't run away, Paul. Idris, look, your Paul's running away. Oh, no. What a shame. Idris, Paulie, don't run away. I'm right here to answer you.
It was actually a fruitful discussion.
Fruitful in what manner? George, this is hey, the problem is he'll run from me. Because he can't talk to me. That's the problem. Huh? Don't worry, man. I'm right here. So, Paul, I want to talk to your points. And Paul runs. Well done, Paul. Run away. And you haven't proved Muhammad to me, so I'm still waiting. Yeah? And I'm not going to prove it to you as well. That's fine. Okay. So, Paul ran. Oh, that's what I wanted. All right.